Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so delighted that you can join us today. My name is Allison Cornish. I use the pronouns she and her. I live in Western Massachusetts on land long stewarded by the Nipmuc peoples. And I serve as the Chaplaincy Initiative Coordinator here at the BTS Center. I am so grateful that all of you can join us today. And for a little introduction to the BTS Center, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Nicole.
Hello, friends. So nice to be with you this midday. And it is a joy to bring you greetings on behalf of the BTS Center's leadership team. The BTS Center is the organizational successor to Bangor Theological Seminary, and we are focused on spiritual leadership for a climate-changed world. Our programs and research initiatives engage with pastors, spiritual directors, preachers, lay leaders, and chaplains. We host vocational discernment and leadership formation programs in the form of book studies and retreats and public conversations like this one. Cooperation and collaboration is a central value and posture for the BTS Center, and we're grateful for all of our partner organizations working on this moment together, including, and perhaps most especially today, the Chaplaincy Innovation Lab. Michael.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Nicole. And I'm sorry I disappeared. I realized my speakers were unplugged, so I couldn't hear anybody. But I'm glad to be back here. Yes, thank you. And the BTS Center has been such a vital partner in this work in care for the climate and intersecting with chaplaincy. It is something that the labs community had needed for a very long time. But because we had so many other things going on, that was just not our central focus. And so when the opportunity arrived to partner with the BTS Center in this way, it was absolutely perfect. And so we've been so fortunate to enjoy this connection with the BTS Center over these past couple of years, or however long it's been. And we are just so happy to support this work and to be in conversation with you. And I look forward to sharing a bit more about the lab as our event unfolds today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. I want to say just a few words about the BTS Center's work with and for chaplains and the environment. The BTS Center's particular interest in chaplains because you already have and employ the skills that are so needed to assist individuals and communities in accepting and making difficult choices and adapting to change. You understand trauma and how to tend to it. You offer rituals and practices of loss and grief and healing. You help people with meaning making and tending to loss and grief and brokenness and cultivating and maintaining hope and resilience and so much more. We are in a time, as we all know, when each and every one of you brings presence and skills and worldviews and commitments and knowledge to a world that needs it so desperately. So thank you for the work that you are doing already. And we hope that the programs like the one that we offer today just help you enhance what you are already doing. So we're going to get started here with a few prompts in the chat. The first is hello in any language that you choose. Let's put hello in any language that you choose in the chat. Oh my goodness. Lots and lots of hellos, but a couple of hellos and holas, and one in a language that I don't know, an alphabet that is new to me. So that is great. I'm going to have to look that one up. Blessings to you all. Shalom, habari, sorry, bonjour. Absolutely lovely languages here. And as you continue to do that, will you add in where you are zooming in from today? Where are you zooming in from today? We see Philadelphia, Decatur, Georgia, Portland, Maine. Medford, Massachusetts, Santa Maria, California, Rye, New York. Oh my gosh, we have quite a few geographic locations going here. Tampa, traditional lands of the Suquamish. Yeah. Bend, Oregon. Nairobi, hello, welcome to you. So glad to see you. Olympia, Washington, Hamden, Maine. Keep adding those locations. These are so amazing. England, oh, lovely. This third prompt may take a little bit more reaching into your thoughtfulness today, which is, do you have a practice to share that helps you come back to earth when your worry or your outrage takes you into a spiral? Do you have a practice that you can share that helps you and helps us come back to earth when your worry or outrage takes you into a spiral? Night sky gazing, sit spot, quiet time, anchor breathing, walk in nature, plant a wildflower, meditation, gardening. You did not have to think about these. Obviously, they were right at your fingertips. I love it. Music, contemplative walks, making mandalas in nature, made of fallen items. Oh, gosh, crafts, watering plants, yoga, walking. Wow. Barefoot walking, walking the dog, labyrinths. I just love these. I am planning on saving the chat and going back to this because this is so rich. Watching the hummingbirds outside my office window. What a beautiful, beautiful image. Thank you for sharing all of these practices. And yes, we do need the grounding right now, don't we? I would like to introduce to you Lauren Van Ham, our presenter today. Lauren is an ordained interfaith minister. She served as a hospital chaplain for 9 years, focusing in psychiatry, palliative care, and bereavement support, and later served with a consulting firm where she custom designed employee engagement programs for multinational companies committed to sustainability and culture change. Just pause there for a moment and think about the breadth that we've just had in that one sentence. Psychiatry, palliative care, bereavement, multinational companies committed to sustainability and culture change. I think we have just defined the umbrella of this kind of chaplaincy right here. Lauren's passion for spirituality, art, and earth's teaching infuse her focus in eco-ministry and sacred activism. And for more than a decade, Lauren was the dean at the Chaplaincy Institute, an interfaith seminary based in California in the United States. Her essay, Way of the Eco-Chaplain, appeared in the collection Ways of the Spirit, Voices of Women, and her work with Green Sangha was featured in Renewal, a documentary celebrating the efforts of religious environmental activists from diverse faith traditions across America, which was the first, I think, video that did that. She's a guest writer for Progressing Spirit, an online publication exploring theology, spirituality, and public events. She's a guest faculty member at several schools in California, a spiritual director, and serves as Earth Restoration Coordinator for the United Religions Initiative, URI, a global interfaith grassroots organization. She holds degrees from Carnegie Mellon University and Naropa University. Lauren, we are so delighted to have you with us today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And over to you.
Thank you, Allison, Nicole, Michael. It is such a thrill for me to share this time and space with you all today. And I don't know if you saw me while you were all putting into the chat the things that you do to come back to earth, but I was like jumping, dancing. I was so dazzled by what you do. And it really, really is a perfect thing to hold as I share my thoughts today, which are an invitation for all of us to claim how we are showing up in this moment, not because what an eco chaplain does is a job right? I mean, Allison was saying some ways that I have made a living for myself with quote unquote this work. But what I would like us to be thinking about today is not so much the set of activities that bring us revenue, but all of the ways that we are eco-chaplains, whether or not we're using some version of that word to describe our offering in the world, right? And so with our beginner's mind, let's just think about some terms. Allison already did a wonderful job a moment ago of describing chaplain, what chaplain means, what chaplains do: honoring mystery, looking for God, providing spiritual care in a variety of settings, often settings that have been described as profane or without spirit, right? Like a military battleground, a prison. And here now we are thinking about corporations and civilization, right? And a chaplain's call, at least part of the call, is to say, here, in this watershed, on this removed mountaintop, in this detention center, where migrants are trying to find water and new ways of being, in this place too, no matter how lost or beyond love this person or place appears, the source of our breath abides here too. This is the prophetic work of what we do as chaplains. And then let's think about this word eco. So I'm sure all of us on the call know eco means home, oikos, the Greek word. Eco is all about relationships. I'm going to share some images now to take us into that space. Oops, apologies. Let's try again. Here we go. My mentors at Movement Generation, some of you have maybe also spent time with these great people, have offered some definitions on this slide. So I want to give them credit. But let's think about the relationships that show up in the word ecosystem, where the water, the soil, the animals are all working together in this complex system of relationships. Or in ecology, where we put together home and our understanding of these relationships. And in economy, when we organize our relationships in a place. Now, notice that when we say economy, with this definition of home and organizing relationships, we're not thinking about money. We're not talking about gross domestic product. Economies can be measured in lots of ways. We could be measuring our economy with respect to soil or water or well-being and happiness. What constitutes the wealth of an economy? We, with our beginner's mind, can go back to square one and think about that a bit. And I think we're being invited to do that very much right now. In the space of ecological justice, we're thinking about how all of those relationships are thriving in a balanced way, bringing together home and justice. So then when we put on our chaplain hat and think about how we're showing up for others in this moment, we begin to notice the eco-anxiety, perhaps, maybe a lack of relationship with home. And how might that then start to show up as symptoms such as grief, disease, anxiety. And in eco-spirituality, we look for the relationship of sacred spirit coming into the home and all of our relationships. So these are again, some ways of maybe starting to see ways that you have been an eco-chaplain, whether or not you're using that word or not. And eco-chaplaincy, I believe, really begins by appreciating our cosmic reality. Because this is no small task, returning to our origin story is a core part of our continual spiritual practice. Our cosmic story is a new story because the universe is expanding. It's an ancient story because it is the first and only story. And most importantly, it's a love story. For 13.8 billion years, in some form or another, you and I have been part of the love story. I mean, isn't it incredible when we really think about this through the lens of deep time? For 13.8 billion years, we have been here. So to live and nurture this emerging, life-embracing story is what I call eco-chaplaincy, eco-evangelism, if you will, to remind people of this story. All of us can do it. And today I want to talk about 3 practices that have been helpful for me in doing this work. So I spoke a moment ago about economy. Our capitalist story, as we know, teaches individualism. But in the love story, every being is a protagonist, even the bad guys. The capitalist story feeds isolation, but the love story very naturally asks for our intimacy. The dominant story is a really loud one. It's stressful. It depends on our scarcity thinking. But the love story is fierce. And that's why I want to say that the first practice of these 3 practices is becoming intimate. With our eyes and our hearts open for what is here and what is coming, we are all part of the plot in this love story. Parents, engineers, civic leaders, farmers, volunteers, all of us are part of this love story. And the divine is ready for each one of our co-creative acts to help the current story, the loud one, fall apart with as little harm and as much kindness as possible. Some of you maybe have done permaculture, learned a little bit about it. There's an acronym in permaculture that is PATO, PATO. It stands for protracted and thoughtful observation. This, I believe, is the intimacy practice, really taking time to slow down and be with one another, to be with all of what is, the decay, the fear, the conflict. And creation models this for us really well. Creation is good about being in the compost bin. Creation is good about understanding balance and sacred reciprocity. So we can look to the ecosystems to be our teachers in these ways. And I'm happy to talk about more of these practices in the Q&A if we want some other ideas about that. And we know that this moment is really hard. So becoming intimate with some of these realities is stressful. 7 out of the 9 ecological tipping points have been met. Societal breakdown is palpable as the US empire grows brittle. We've elected an authoritarian leader, and electric vehicles aren't going to fix that. So as humans, we get to hold space for the grief, the anger, the shame, the bargaining, the whole mess. And we get to remember ourselves to love. So practice 2 helps us do this. Practice 2 is about begin again. When we see the injustice, we name it. When we feel the grief, we feel it, we honor it. In all the ways we can, we restore ourselves to the communities and this interdependent brilliance that we share. And I think that in light of being collapse aware and reading the horizon and feeling the intensity of all of that, begin again also eases the burden that we might feel to predict or forecast or to know, because we don't. We don't know. We don't know. And we do get to engage in the things that bring meaning and offer restoration and regeneration in our localities in the way we can. So I want to be clear that this isn't about giving up. Slowing down is more about really giving into, instead of breaking down, we break through. And we can practice in this way by serving life for however long each of us has. And this brings us to practice 3. A key component to being an engaged participant in the love story is to really embrace who we are as wild human mammals. In the words of Saint Mary Oliver, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? We get to express ourselves as prophets, mystics, artists, activists. There are a number of examples here of eco-chaplaincy in various forms. We get to paint, write, move, create. And what we create is the giant question. This is where there are real theological implications, I think. We know that some of what we create is deadening. Some of what we have created leads to moral injury and despair. And then there are other things that we have created that are so nourishing and so connecting. And so as eco-chaplains, all of us get to ask, what becomes possible when we admit the disappointment we feel in the failure of progress? Holy cow. What becomes possible when we can just admit it? This has been a sham. This isn't working very well. There are some flaws here. And what happens when we embrace apocalyptic approaches? These apocalyptic approaches have been modeled for us by Jesus, by the Buddha, by other spiritual teachers who have said, not this, not that, but this third way over here. This is super interesting. So I want us to be really curious about these more apocalyptic ideas. Instead of martyrdom or paralysis, we do get to find balance in our work and our activism. And so all of that can happen through local music, local food, cultivating and sharing regenerative economy and different practices that I know many of us are already part of and initiating in our communities. Lament with Earth is not on this slide, but it is a fantastic example of ways that we come together to move this energy, to express ourselves, and to learn together. So I think I want to take us to a final quote and then share with you what I would have put into the chat, but I wanted us to do it in a live way together. So this fantastic quote, I'm going to read it out loud because I think it really does speak to this moment beautifully, is from Ricardo Morales. He organizes in Minnesota. He says, I don't have to tell you that we're at a tipping point in our intertwined histories. We all feel it. The Gulf Stream, the jet stream, the migrant stream, all shifting and changing at once. We, like every generation, are a link between the past and the future, the ancient past, the ancient future. How we step into that role matters a great deal to those who await in the future where we are headed. It matters that we learn to read the land, feel the wind, listen to the vibrations in the ground and the rhythms in each other's hearts. None of us knows how to get there, so we need to become the kind of people capable of figuring it out. There's so much in here. I just really appreciate the ways that Ricardo has shared these thoughts with his eyes wide open, feeling the possibility of reconciliation and repair work that needs to happen, and also returning ourselves to ancient ways of knowing, wisdom that has always been with us, things that we need to remember and bring along as we travel for however far we're able to go. So my practice that helps me come back to earth when I'm in a swirl of worry or stress and fear is a short chant. And if you want to, I don't know if you can unmute. Are people able to unmute? So if you want to unmute, you can participate in the cacophony of weirdness that is Zoom when we're all chanting together, or you can leave your microphone off. It's up to you. But we'll do it 3 times. I think it is so wonderful that in the English language, the word home actually rhymes with the primordial sound of Om, this syllable that is so important to Sanatana Dharma and other forms of Eastern practice. So the chant is H-O-M-E, home. And we'll just do it 3 times to bring ourselves home, to bring ourselves together in this moment. Okay? H-O-M-E, home. H-O-M-E, home. H-O-M-E, home.
Oh,
Thank you.
Lauren, what a wonderful, wonderful way to wrap us around back to eco and home and oikos and the centrality of that to your work, our work, the work that needs to be done. I'm so appreciative of that and of your words and of your images. Friends, feel free to put questions for Lauren in the chat. And while you do that, Michael and I are going to kick off with a couple of questions of our own. And then we will turn to yours. So Lauren, my question is, you talked a little bit about, what's crumbling, what's beginning to give way here. And some of what's been giving way for a while are institutions. And yet we know that chaplaincy is very bonded to institutions in many ways and many places. I wonder if you might reflect just for a moment about the different kinds of work that you've been able to do, sort of connected or embedded in institutions, and the different kind of work that you've been able to do when you've chosen to step away from an institution and sort of go off, into the wilderness on your own. What's the different quality? What's the different experience?
I think my most succinct response to this question is the way that our call may take us into the belly of the beast sometimes to try to make a change from within. And then other times when we maybe get really impatient or a little restless, and it becomes important to say, fiddlesticks on this system. It's not changing fast enough, or it's not worth my time. I need to go and get refueled somewhere else for a while. And my work has definitely been informed by both of those things. And I've learned a lot in both places. In the multinational work, some of you know this story, but I spent time in Walmart with 1.4 million Walmart associates. And the most important learning for me in that space is that the corporations are people, right? Every day I got to spend time with people who have grandchildren, who love fishing, who love their dogs, who like the places where they live. And it was so important to be remembered to that, because on the surface, I was so mad at a corporation that was causing so much destruction. So I think that's been the most important left foot, right foot for me in that work. And is that kind of what you were getting at, Allison?
Yeah, it is. It's the humanizing, really, that the work that we need to rehumanize and de-other across the board. And it doesn't matter whether that's an institution or corporation or an individual that you're working with. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And to remember that you're absolutely right. In this time of brittleness, we're seeing a lot of systems that maybe they were never designed to work that well, but they've certainly worked better than they're working now, historically. And so to kind of, when we sign up to be in those spaces, we say, well, I know that the academic model doesn't actually serve everyone. There's plenty of injustice here. In what ways can I help to expose some of that and offer some alternatives? Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot.
I love that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to pass it to Michael, who's got a question of his own queued up. And then we'll turn to all of your questions that are coming in on the chat.
Thank you, Allison. And of course, thank you, Lauren, for a wonderful, so many things to think about here. Then I really love these events because it's not just here's information, digest it, but this is something that we'll all be thinking about for quite some time. I know. I wanted to ask about the relationship between this enormous framework that you've given us with the entire universe, right? That's the biggest framework we could possibly get our minds around, even to some degree. And I'm wondering about the relationship between that and the extremely individual. And here's why I asked that. There are a lot of chaplains I know of who are really interested in doing climate conscious work, but they are serving in contexts that are not that don't immediately offer a daily opportunity to do this work. So I'm thinking of the hospital chaplain who really would like to put their spiritual care at the service of the planet in those exact terms, but their daily work is with people who are suffering and dying and ill and their families and their caregivers. And so I know that what they're trying to reconcile in some degree is this enormous cosmic problem with the reality in front of them, which is one person or one family or whatever. So in your experience, as you have been helping people to sort of awaken this within themselves, how have you helped them reconcile that in the enormity of this problem with the seemingly small frame of their everyday work?
You are bringing me back to my role as a healthcare chaplain and the ways that I was often looking for the universe story within the rooms of a patient, within the nursing station, within the cafeteria. And there are a lot of opportunities. So I think that healthcare settings more and more are looking for ways to bring nature into the healing space, right? With their atriums, their gardens, their rooftops, that sort of thing. So anytime that a chaplain is able to invite staff or family members, patients maybe, into these spaces where they're able to connect beings who aren't human, the more than human world, is a way of remembering ourselves to that larger story. And then institutionally speaking, how is that institution organizing itself like an ecosystem? This can be really prophetic work. And we don't have to get it right. We don't have to have a home run every time, but just to even plant those seeds to think about a little bit. I had a bulletin board that was mine as a chaplain at the hospital. And so I would use a lot of images on that bulletin board for how the spiritual care department was envisioning itself. And I also started, this is super dated language now, but it was an environmental action committee at the hospital. And it was a way for people to kind of think about ways that we might green practices that were otherwise just going to get chucked into the landfill. So all of these ways helped us maybe feel a little more connected to the vastness of the real story, even as we are in the minutia of one patient stories or interdisciplinary rounds or whatever was going on.
I'm gonna just jump in here, Lauren. You're so present and aware, and we don't expect you to look at the chat at the same time, but there were a couple of comments here. Somebody said, I just put 50 packs of wildflower seeds on the kitchen table in our hospice. So a beautiful way of doing that. And another, therapeutic horticulture offers a modality that allows chaplains and other caregivers to weave climate distress into their vocation. So beautiful comments from folks here. But this next question, I think you and I talked just a little bit about when we were planning today. There's a question, how does one become an eco-chaplain, especially given there are no CPE locations for it? There are in Australia, I'll just say that out loud. And what site placements do you see eco-chaplains serving at? And I think you hinted at this, that sort of everyone has an eco-chaplain aspect of their chaplaincy. But if somebody were to really focus in on that as sort of a concentration or a specialty, would you like to speak to that question?
Sure. So I suspect that quite a few of us are aware of different institutions and organizations where some form of eco-chaplaincy or eco-spirituality is taught. So there may be some actual classes that one can take to feel more articulate about who you are and what you're doing as an eco-chaplain. I really want to emphasize the importance of ritual and professing. So for me, you're absolutely right that I didn't have a CPE program that helped me become the eco chaplain. It was my conversations with a spiritual director for years, where at one point I said, I think I'm an eco chaplain and I don't know what that is. And so then we felt into that together. And when I felt more clear about what it was, I went back to my alma mater, the Chaplaincy Institute, and I said, I need to renew my ordination vows and I need to add a few so that I can profess myself an eco chaplain. And that ritual, you saw a picture of it, we were blessing the earthworms, but that was really important for me. And so I encourage everyone in the way that you need to create some sort of sacred threshold to step over and feel in your bones who you are and what you're doing. Please go for it. And I'd love to talk with anyone about that on the side if it would be helpful for you.
There is a really important question that someone has put in the chat, and I want to ask that, and I want to address another question just very quickly, and maybe it can be a sort of a little research thread for someone. But one of the questions is, are you aware of chaplains working within fossil fuel companies? And Lauren, you may have experience of that, and please do tell us. I just wanted to share, I know that this is the case in some areas where there is drilling for oil in an ocean setting. So there was an article a few years ago about a chaplain that serves oil rig workers in the North Sea. And so I believe this clergy person was ordained in the Church of Scotland or the Church of England working in Scotland. That gets complicated. But anyway, every few weeks, this chaplain would be flown out there in a helicopter and spend a few days with the crew and tend to them. And I spoke with this chaplain, and it was my understanding that he views this very much as these are his parishioners, essentially, and I have to take care of them no matter what they're doing. And so, in some sense, the destructive things they were doing had nothing to do with his spiritual care. And I think that gets back, Lauren, to your point of corporations being the people that make them up and caring for them. So if you have other examples, please do share them. But I wanted to offer that up. And this other question, I think, is something that is both of long-term value, but also will help everybody engaged in this work directly. And I'm thinking especially of people that are interested in becoming chaplains of any variety. But the question anyway is, so many of us and so many of the individuals and communities we serve feel the urgency of this moment and are anxious and eager to find outlets for advocacy and activism. What have you found to be resonant with folks who are feeling this drive to practical action as you respond to this impulse and invite slowing, feeling, and tending to the heart. I really love that question. And we see this especially from our higher ed chaplains that say students, they see so many problems in the world and they want to fix them now. And because they can't fix them now, that gives them great anxiety. So, Lauren, to the extent you can speak to turning the volume down within ourselves, I think will be very helpful.
The story that you're sharing about the oil rig, Michael, that, so first of all, grateful for that person. And maybe there should be a call with him so that we can all learn from him. And I think I was aware when I was talking with members of different multinational companies that in every conversation, there was the possibility of planting seeds for transformation. So it wasn't that I was there to convince that person that they should leave their job, or that there should be a union where they worked, although I certainly had those kinds of agendas in my heart. It was about asking questions and being really curious so that we might all find ourselves connected to a larger root system or mycelial web. And I think that is especially needed now, right? Like we've just seen in this election that there is a lot about our fellow Americans that we didn't know. And there are a lot of people who I certainly want to be curious and courageous with so that I can do a better job of reading what feels real for a lot of people. So that to me feels like the work. I'm not aware of chaplains working in fossil fuel companies. I am aware of chaplains doing a lot of demonstrating and organizing around fossil fuel companies. And then the slowing down piece, becoming intimate with what is. I think one of the people who is modeling this best right now is Joe Brewer, the work of Joe Brewer, who is creating, well, he and his partner have created the Design School for Regenerating Earth. And he's doing a fantastic job of saying, yes, I am a collapse aware person. I recognize that we are in planetary overshoot. And I am an earth scientist, and I see where different bioregions have the potential of being regenerated. And we can use traditional knowledge, and we can listen to our indigenous elders, and we can teach our children. And in these slower ways of really connecting and really sinking into the soil, we can do some things that are powerful, whether or not it actually works, right? Very Joanna Macy here. Like, I don't have to have a guarantee to want to get in here and love the soil and to do this. So if that's a new name to you, I encourage you to look up some of Joe Brewer's work. It's really great.
Just wonderful, wonderful responses here. I'm so appreciative of it. And just the fossil fuel conversation reminded me of one of the first, I think, people who named themselves an eco-chaplain, Sarah Vicasi. Of course, her first work was to go to communities in West Virginia where there was mountaintop removal and also people suffering from the toxic waste in the holding pond. So her intention really was to step into the fullest of community there. And I'm thinking too of the moral injury that happens to people who find themselves working in industries that are not in alignment with their value system, with their moral orienting system. And that seems to me to be amazing work for chaplains as well. So, a couple of places that we can maybe expand that conversation a little bit even more. So there's a very straightforward question. How did you get in the door to provide eco-chaplaincy to corporations? You go knock really hard, or what happened?
How did Walmart let you in is a really good question.
I think it was a divinely timed moment. That work began in 2007. Al Gore had given Americans a lot to think about with the film An Inconvenient Truth. corporations were very much in the hot seat around trying to figure out how they could provide the things that we need in a more thoughtful and better way. And so the corporations were looking to consulting firms, and the consulting firms were saying, oh, we need trainers. And so it was just a really beautiful moment of me being able to raise my hand and say, I'll train people, and I'll train people so long as it's okay that I'm a chaplain, because I can't leave that at the door. So I am going to continue to bring, all of who I am into the space. And maybe because it was a consulting firm in San Francisco, I don't know, but they were open to it and I was able to do it. I feel really grateful.
Michael, what have you got as your next question?
This is it's it's sort of tangential to some of this, but I think it's really important. And Lauren, I suspect you have some experience of this, but the question is very simple: are there chaplains to farm workers, or maybe we could even broaden that to people that are in other sort of service-oriented industries that we very often overlook?
I love that question. So, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I know that there have been a lot of pastors who have been providing a lot of care here in the Sacramento Delta. And like when there was a levee that broke in Watsonville, California last year, there were lots and lots of clergy of different faiths who were showing up. I would like us all to think courageously and innovatively about how we can begin to show up in these communities where spiritual care could be really helpful, especially in the spaces of, Allison mentioned Sarah Vakese, trying to get out of a 4-generation family of coal mining. That's a tough turn, right? That's why this just transition work is so important, because there's so much fear and scarcity. But I've always done it this way. I've always done it this way. I don't know how to make this turn. And so in the ways that we can be connecting with civic leaders, community organizers, the things that are real in the ecosystems where we live, which could be farming, or it could be mining, or it could be financial districts, but in any of those places where we can begin to show up as somebody who's willing to ask the courageous questions and then look for creative responses, that's, I think, where it gets stellar. That's the universe story continuing to expand.
I love the twinkly hands. That's just perfect. Yes, I love it. And I had dropped into the chat that I know here in Massachusetts, farm workers are beginning to be connected by the state to social workers to deal with some of the stress and anxiety that's coming with droughts or extraordinarily wet seasons, the changing of our growing seasons. I'm thinking that's a perfect place for a chaplain, even more because, and a climate conscious chaplain, because as one farm worker said, first I have to explain what farming is, and then I have to explain what climate change is. And by the time I've done that, my hour is up. So, we do need some different models there. There's a really good question here about what your work is with the movement generation. What's going on there in the streets, and how have you been accompanying folks in protest and resistance and in resilience, I would say?
So we're not talking about movement generation, the organization. We're actually talking about movement chaplaincy. Is that right?
Well, the question said movement generation. Maybe you could do both if
A little bit of both.
apply.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So movement generation is an organization that's housed mostly in Oakland, I would say. And they are co-teachers with me in the eco ministry course that I teach every year. And they do a fantastic job of talking about ecology and community resilience. And they look for examples around the globe where this sort of thing is happening. And they are wonderfully, they're incredible ecologists in that they will always look at everything that is happening and say, how does this fit in here? So their work to include whatever society has kicked to the margins is revelatory, and I feel stretched by them continually. So I encourage you to look them up. Great people. And then the idea of movement chaplaincy and the ways that we are taking to the streets, as it were. This is another left foot, right foot example, because I think maybe especially with the incoming administration, it could be important to show up in the streets. I will go if I'm called that way. I think it's also really important to show up in our neighborhoods with mutual aid mapping, and again, kind of restoring our bioregions to make them as resilient as possible. And so the local work that we're all doing is vital. And one way that we can continue to do that, whether it's in our neighborhood or in the financial district or with the farmers, like those things that we were just listing, is to remember that nature is always at the table. And if nature isn't at the table, how can we bring nature in? How are we organizing ourselves around our watershed? Or in what ways are we remembering this endangered species in how we are making this decision about what happens to this property? That sort of thing.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for your time and your expertise. I think that, what you have done here today is really important in three ways. One, you've given us a very capacious vision, and I'm really hanging on especially to this word home. I know that's something that it's a word that we use every day in lots of different ways, but connecting it with this work, I think, is really important. Practical next steps that all of us can take to incorporate this work into the work of spiritual care, but also just filling everyone's cup up a little bit more in the work that they are doing. So in those three ways and more, you've done so much for us here this afternoon. So thank you for being with us.
Really my pleasure. May I just end with a closing invitation for us before we sign off, or pass it back to whoever's going to sign us off? John Wheeler, who is definitely one of the greatest physicists of this century, he's sharing this emerging concept now that suggests that our thoughts toward life itself, our relationship with life itself, is what shapes the universe. So, he's working with those other physicists who are noticing that if I'm looking at a particle and I say to the particle, wave, 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 that the particle becomes a wave. And if I'm looking at a wave and I say particle, 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 it will change to a particle. This is it. Like 13.8 billion years in, physicists and eco-centered practitioners, I mean, the indigenous are probably like, duh, right? But we all agree that it isn't about our institutions or our identities, but that it's about relationships. It always has been. So I leave us with that.
Thank you, Lauren. Always good to end with a mind blown kind of moment. And because I was attending to the chat so closely, I just want to offer some gratitude to those of you who opted into what really felt like a chat community today. So many people gathered here with excellent questions and examples and resources to share. So many thanks to those of you who were asking and responding, and really this conversation clearly brought up a lot of does anyone know about this? Has anybody seen that? And then some people sharing that back and forth. I just want to take a moment to invite you all to continue to journey with the BTS Center as we explore and nurture spiritual leadership in a climate changed world. So I have just a couple of invitations to offer at this point. The first is Lament with Earth. This was something referenced earlier in the program. This is a space for grief in community and features beautiful, worshipful productions from the many. Our next gathering is Wednesday, December 4th. We'll be co-hosting that gathering with an organization called Radical Joy for Hard Times. And we offer these seasonally. So 5 times over the course of the year, you'll find in the chat the link to sign up to be part of our Lament with Earth community. Next up, I want to share with you that we are launching our 3rd round of conversation circles, being chaplains in a climate changed world. We'll be launching that in February. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want some more of this sort of conversation, we invite you into a space where you will be getting to know colleagues, where you will be exposed to a sacred space, finding companionship, offering support, brainstorming, seeking inspiration, and experimenting. We're so grateful to the Chaplaincy Innovation Lab for inspiring this model and continuing to partner with us on this program. Applications are being accepted now and are due January 3rd. So we hope you'll apply. And last but not least, I am one of the co-hosts for the BTS Center's podcast called Climate Changed, and would love to find my way onto your car radio or into your AirPods. We are having conversations about life, love, and leadership in a climate changed world. Every episode includes a grounding and practical next steps, along with an interview of a thought leader and conversation about that interview. So season 2, episode 1 was called What Does Collective Truth Telling Look Like? And we talked with Rob Shetterly. Season 2, episode 4 was called How Do You Love the World as It Is? And we had a conversation with Ray Buckley. And season 3, episode 4 is going to be featuring this concept of climate conscious chaplaincy. That'll be released in December. So we invite you to pay attention to our podcast. Michael, is there anything you want to share in terms of Chaplaincy Innovation Lab upcoming?
We rely so heavily on the BTS Center for climate conscious initiatives. So I always point people directly to the BTS Center. But I will say, please do come and check out all that we have to offer, which is an enormous variety. The next event we have coming up will be on December 10th, and it has to do with spiritual care specifically for depression and anxiety. And that's not only as a result of the climate crisis, but just in everyday life. And so we're going to have a mental health chaplain who's going to give a presentation on treating these issues through a spiritual care lens, especially as they exist separately from larger diagnoses that people might be experiencing. And then in a very practical sense, I encourage folks to keep an eye on a project that we're going to be launching and really getting into next year that has to do with very big picture definitions of what spiritual care is. And one part of that project will be a really brass tacks sort of taxonomy of the financial underpinning of spiritual care. How do you get the money to make this work? And that's really boring and bureaucratic, but for a burgeoning field like climate conscious chaplaincy, if you want to do this work, usually you're going to have to pay the bills. And so we hope to surface some really interesting and useful information out of that work as well. So I invite you to keep up with us on that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone who was able to join with us. Nicole is just dropping in the chat the links that you can use to keep us to keep connected with us. The BTS Center, the Chaplaincy Innovation Lab, and Lauren as well. So I invite you at this point to unmute and, as Lauren says, use the cacophony of Zoom and say your gratitudes and your goodbyes as we go off into the sunset here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.